The Rey movie, announced recently at the most recent Star Wars Celebration. Many are now wondering, will it actually come to fruition? Why is this different than Patty Jenkins and the situation with so many other Star Wars series and films? Can this actually come out? Can Kathleen Kennedy, in the twilight of her career, really bring to fruition a sequel trilogy? Well, let's find out, and I'll tell you exactly who the director is behind this Rey movie. Explaining entertainment, keeping you ahead of the culture curve. It's what we attempt to do every day here on the WDW Pro channel. It's such an honor to have all of you with us today as we look at Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, the lady who is pinned to be the director behind this new Rey movie. Many doubt its existence will even come to be. But we're going to look in the direction of this lady and find out who she might be and how she might influence the Rey movie if it comes out. If you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to the algorithms. When you click it, we're talking about that notification bell. Here we go. This article from dawn.com, link in the description down below, says, "We need women as heroes," affirms Sharmeen Obaid on global stage. This one's from a few years ago. However, it's necessary for us to take a look at it because it's going to tell us much about her. It says from New York, seated next to Hollywood heavyweight Meryl Streep, America's favorite comedian Jon Stewart, and critically acclaimed director Ava DuVernay, Pakistan's Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy drew great applause from a packed crowd in New York City's Lincoln Center this week. Tina Brown's 6th annual Women in the World Summit kicked off on Wednesday, again this from 2015, featuring some of the world's most inspiring leaders in the fight for social change. This particular panel, moderated by Stewart, represented the role of filmmakers on both sides of the lens in portraying extraordinary and powerful women. Often we view women from my part of the world as victims. We need to have heroes. We need to have strong, brave women, said Obaid-Chinoy. Again, she is the director for Rey. And as we read that line, it's hard not to see how that would be true. Well, come on, Pro, you're supposed to be totally against her, right? That's what the shtick is. No. If she is talking about the women in her part of the world who are restricted in ways that may be unfair and undue, let's say by not allowing women in some countries to drive, or perhaps not allowing them to go out and about without a family member present, some of those very difficult issues to even discuss online, but probably need to be discussed. If she's talking about that, then yes, I totally agree. Women in those parts of the world are often just seen flatly as victims. And yes, I agree. It is important to reveal many of those women's their heroic journeys, let's say, in media, because otherwise, what do? Do you just label a vast swath of the world, all those women, as being just victims with no other story to tell? So I'm with her on that one. But here's where it goes. The Oscar-winning filmmaker referred to one such hero, Syeda Fatima, who is fighting bonded labor in rural Punjab and is also the subject of her most recent documentary. The discomfort felt by audiences back home is a desired outcome for Obaid-Chinoy. I love making men uncomfortable. It is only when you have difficult conversations that you may look in the mirror and not like your reflection. All right, so let's talk about this. This is a quote that has been taken across the internet and moved in all kinds of different directions. There are some who say that she is simply referring to the men who, either by their own choices or by their legacy, choose to continue a system of perhaps oppression in certain parts of the world where women are not allowed to do many, many things, where women are restricted from education, where women are restricted in their dress, women are restricted in many different manners. And if she's specifically talking about that sort of a context, then okay, I can understand wanting to make men in particular uncomfortable. However, I have watched the video. I have seen this in context, and yes, the link is in the description. In this context, she's talking to Jon Stewart, who sort of sets up the question by including himself as a man in what he's asking about. He wants to know, he wants to know in general, how do they feel about men and what men have done to women? And her response is seemingly talking about just men in general. If she wants to make men in general uncomfortable, well, that is a very different situation than if she is attempting to make everybody uncomfortable in a movie. I'm not sure why you would just want to make men uncomfortable. That's a very strange thing indeed. Now, let's move on from that point and let's take a look at this Kathleen Kennedy, inspired perhaps, but maybe even Bob Iger inspired Star Wars movie starring Daisy Ridley, announced again at Star Wars Celebration and directed by Miss Chinoy. Star Wars, Kathleen Kennedy gives new details on the upcoming sequel involving Rey Skywalker. With Daisy Ridley returning to the galaxy far, far away, Kathleen Kennedy gives slightly more insight on the setting of the upcoming films. This by E.J. Tanganan, JoBlo, the website we're coming from here. Now, almost certainly I have mangled that name, and I do apologize. But here's what the article says. This year's Star Wars Celebration brought forth a bevy of announcements, from the unveiling of the newest Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny trailer to the teases of upcoming shows like the new season of Andor and the live-action Ahsoka series. Lucasfilm is showing that there is a bright future for the Star Wars brand. One of the continually developing projects was the announcement of a new chapter in Star Wars features that was originally to be written by Damon Lindelof. By the way, we think that his script, the skeleton at least of it, is probably going to be kept intact. And directed by Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, Lindelof would eventually part from the project, but it has been revealed that Obaid-Chinoy's film involves the return of Daisy Ridley's Rey. By the way, they would not have brought Daisy Ridley back on the stage at Star Wars Celebration unless Robert Iger was aware and knew that was going to happen. That had to have been signed off by him for it to occur. It sets up way too much stuff. The other thing that you need to know, and this is perhaps why we think that this has such a good chance of coming out versus the Patty Jenkins content that was scrapped. But the reason we think that might happen is because, let's think about the context.
Make sure to catch The Pro Show Thursdays 5 to 7 Eastern Time. Entertainment Explained, The Culture Curve Conquered, live with Pro and all his friends.
Robert Iger in November came back and took over at Disney. Within weeks, perhaps days, Daisy Ridley was over at Lucasfilm. That means that she probably had to arrange being at Lucasfilm within absolutely days of Robert Iger taking over. And then within months after that, we have the announcement that she is returning for more Star Wars movies. Here's another thing to note. My sources, which, by the way, were exactly right on this Rey movie coming out, say that Daisy Ridley has already signed a contract, and that contract includes an option for 2 additional films. However, that gets tricky because let's read the next line on this website. The new untitled Rey films have also been revealed to be a new trilogy, with Obaid-Chinoy helming the first installment. Now, let me say, I think this article is incorrect here. The new trilogy, I think that it's referring to, are the other additional films that were announced at Star Wars Celebration. That includes the Mandoverse film, and that includes other entities. I don't know if they're considering the Taika Waititi film part of it or not, but I don't think that that's actually a trilogy. There was some confusion early on about that in the way it was announced, but no, I think that those are standalone independent films, and I think that Daisy Ridley has been given 2 additional films as an option, but that may just be a way for Disney to try to hang on to her should the Rey film be exceedingly popular and that they want to make sequels afterwards, or perhaps in order for them to make cameo appearances with her in other movies. Now, I have not yet heard any corroborating sources claiming that Rey will be appearing in Disney Plus shows. I don't know anything about that yet. I'm not saying that rumor is untrue. I'm just saying that I don't have corroboration on it quite yet. The only current details known are that it will involve the rebuilding of the Jedi Order and the New Republic. According to Coming Soon, Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy has spilled slightly more details about the upcoming films. Here's what she said. As we move into the future space, this story is about 15 years outside of the rise of Skywalker. Obviously, we realized post-war, post-First Order, rise of the new Jedi Order, we left Episode 9 with Rey making a commitment to Luke Skywalker that she would rebuild the Jedi Order. The same Luke Skywalker who threw his lightsaber away, the same Luke Skywalker who decided to be a sad sack and live on an island as a hermit. I'm not so sure that that promise was meant a whole lot in those movies, right? You desecrated the characters. You crushed the legacy roles. She would also explain that although Star Wars playing to its current strength of serial television, what? Star Wars strength is serial television? When did that happen? Used to be the biggest franchise on the planet. It used to be the box office blockbuster darling. She would like to continue to explore the mainline stories in feature films. And so here we are. We're ready to do that. And it took a lot of discussion because obviously we've been developing stories in different spaces. And television has been a big focus of our attention right now. But there's still so much interest in what happens after the rise of Skywalker. So we're excited to be doing that. Well, I don't think that follows in line with what has been said in terms of their market research. I think that they know, absolutely, although they may ignore it, that there are two eras of Star Wars that people don't want to go to. That's the High Republic that they have invented whole cloth, and the post-sequel trilogy. We might call that the sequel era. And the reason people don't want to go there is because they hate the sequel trilogy by and large. Now, let's return, though, to learning more about Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. This coming out just hours ago from International The News. Link in the description. It's by Maheen Sabi. Skywalker's not a real person, though in a sense he is every person. He's a prototype, or as Carl Jung would say, he's an archetype, part of the collective unconscious. Well, interesting, eh? Sitting before me in a black kurta and speaking her mind is Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, winner of 2 Academy Awards and, I'm downplaying this, several other prestigious awards. She agrees that meeting for an interview in person, if possible, is always better. I, too, agree, and we quickly start talking. She is pressed for time. I want everybody to note the way that this is framed, even going into this interview. I love how some of these media outlets will do this. First of all, we get the cultural statement, sitting before me in a black kurta and speaking her mind. Okay, so there's she is both traditional and avant-garde. Then we get the winner of 2 Academy Awards. That lays down the gravitas. Then I'm downplaying this, several other prestigious awards, okay? So she's also humble, and this author just doesn't have time to go through all the things that she has done and managed. She agrees that meeting for interviewing in person is, if possible, is always better. Oh, she's such a people person. She's so in touch with everybody else. She's genuine. And then the author, of course, agrees, but they have to start talking quickly. She's pressed for time. She's a busy lady. All of that paragraph is simply set up to make you be very impressed with whoever is about to be interviewed. And you know what? Very clever writing. Good job. But let's go down here. The author of this interview says, I spot Obaid-Chinoy in solo images with Madonna, Beyonce, Justin Trudeau, Mira Nair, Hillary Clinton, Steven Spielberg, Sadiq Khan, Meryl Streep, Matt Damon, Kate Blanchett, Charlize Theron, Thandie Newton, Mark Ruffalo, George Clooney, and many more. And I find that line to be extremely funny because all of those people are of a single mindset in terms of the way they view the world. So perhaps Obaid-Chinoy is similar. We don't know, although, yeah, it seems like that very much. And that may give us some forecasting of where this will go in terms of the Rey movie. All right, let's go down here, and I want to read this. I also want you to consider that if the Rey movie is not real, then Obaid-Chinoy, she is just really doing a fantastic job in pretending that it is. I suspect that it is a real movie. I suspect that that every effort is being made to put it out. I think that it's here to try to restore Robert Iger's legacy. But let's read what she says. Articulate during the interview, but also deliberately careful when speaking of this new information that made primetime news cycle in Pakistan. That's where Obaid-Chinoy is from, by the way. She pauses before talking about the Star Wars gig, first revealed at a Star Wars celebration event in London earlier in April. I'm excited to be able to work on a story that has influenced the lives of millions of people around the world, she begins. If I take a leaf from my own filmmaking career, I've always worked on films that hold up a mirror to society. Now, that's important, folks. Why is it important? Because she is specifically answering a question about Star Wars, and she's saying that she always works on films that hold up a mirror to society. That is the language of activist filmmaking. And you know what? There's a genre for that. There's an audience for that. But will that work with Star Wars? Is Star Wars a vehicle to hold up a mirror to modern society? Well, let's see what she thinks. A reflection of the way we are, and that is what Star Wars has always been. George Lucas' vision, his films were shaped through that prism. I'm not so sure that's true. My general view on this is that the original Star Wars trilogy is, as was started in this article, that it was an archetypal story, or you may say archetypal story, that it was the journey of Luke Skywalker as innocence that becomes then aware of evil in the world, seeks to destroy it, and then realizes that the actual evil resides within all of us, even to the point that his own father is the antagonist whom he must redeem the sins of. And he redeems the sins of his father by going into the belly of the whale, that being the Death Star, and bringing him forth out of the darkness, that's the dark side, by overcoming the Emperor, not through force necessarily, although perhaps using the force in the case of Star Wars. So I'm not sure that it's a mirror to modern society. I'm inserting the word modern there because I think that's what's intended. I think Star Wars is much more deep and philosophical than that. In its best, that's where the sequel trilogy may have went completely wrong. It is a mainstream project, but her take on how she'd go about it is interesting. As I tell the director what Wonder Woman director Patty Jenkins, funny they bring this up, had said about directing any big-budget franchise film means getting it right because the responsibility of the entire gender is somehow put on your shoulders. If one woman delivers a flop, other women are not tapped because the view dictates women can't do it. If a man delivers a dud, it doesn't mean he will not get other big projects. And, I'm not sure that's true necessarily. If it is, then it's just because Hollywood is a terrible place. I don't think that can be extrapolated to the rest of the Western world. I think that most of the Western world is far superior to Hollywood, in fact. Obaid-Chinoy, however, doesn't exactly share the same views, and her own are simple. She feels a sense of responsibility for every film she has ever made. She says, throughout my career, I have chosen projects and films that speak to me. They are deeply personal and resonate with me. I would like the world to be aware of them, so I shine a light on stories and subjects that few do, and I'm taking Star Wars in the same vein. She goes on to brag about Deborah Chow, Leslie Headland, and says that she is not a savior. All very interesting. Links are in the description below. But I hope this gives you some idea of what's going on with the Rey movie. Whether or not it comes to fruition, this is the group of people behind it. This is what we are going to be working with if it actually comes out. And now, I would like to know what you think. Please drop a comment down below and let me know, do you think the Rey movie will come to theaters? Do you think that the vision set forth by Ms. Chinoy is the one that should be placed for Star Wars? Do you think that her statement with Jon Stewart is out of context? Or do you think that she wants to make all men uncomfortable and enjoys that? Who knows? Well, it's all fascinating to me, and it's interesting to watch. As I have said before, Lucasfilm is like the Titanic that sees the iceberg, and instead of trying to steer away, decides they're going to plow into it as hard as possible. So you've got to love it. It's a great experiment at scale. Folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and that notification bell. When you click it, you stick it to the algorithms. Consider becoming a member. The Pro Show is live Thursdays, 5 to 7 p.m. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. We enjoy having you. You're important. You matter. And the culture and the content and the media and the entertainment that we cover matters because it's stuff you love. And that makes it stuff that's important to us. Wherever you are, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.